So we're going to talk about BevPath. Just as some background, if I could ask you loosely, how many suppliers do y'all work with?
Across our 22 states, right around 2,500 and counting.
2,500, and if I think I remember right from the interfaces, there's something like in excess of 30,000 items in each market, some greatly more than that.
Over almost 300,000 SKUs over across the footprint, yeah.
So that's kind of a lot, pretty complicated.
Couple.
Which one of those suppliers is not important to you?
Not important to us? Well, they're all important to us, certainly.
Which one's the most important?
Most important, any that are sitting right here. Those are the most important right now.
And, are they all welcome to have information? Like if you take a photo of a display, like you're willing to share it with them?
Absolutely. In fact, I think we're being challenged more now than ever before to provide that information and get that information in the hands of all of our suppliers.
And just the important ones, though?
And all of them, yep. All the important ones.
So, Tracy, who runs as part of your IT team, she's here. Does she mind having like a different interface for every single one of those to feed them the data in a custom manner? I'll get Tracy up here.
I think we drive her pretty nuts too, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there's a need maybe for a common way for y'all just to stay sane to share this information without, them piecemealing you.
Absolutely.
All right, so that's kind of the whole reason we're up here talking, right?
Yep.
So that might have been a bunch of stupid questions, whatever. Just trying to set it up.
No stupid questions, just stupid people.
So yeah.
No, I got that wrong.
Yeah. Stupid people with nice haircuts. The whole thing is, as I said at the beginning of the day, it's all about sharing more information, right? And, 25 years ago, table stakes is like a gambling term, right? It's like your ante in poker. If you ain't got table stakes, don't sit down, don't play. And table stakes was depletion data back then, right? Sure. Now the stuff that's table stakes is, and I know there are exceptions, and, you're not going to get the government in a certain control states to do some of this stuff, but generally in open markets, you're going to have to be in your role in the future. You're going to have to play along with the suppliers, or they're going to keep shifting on you, right?
Well, absolutely. And it's not only about the data does become currency, no doubt, but it becomes all the different areas in which data is being reached for. So whether you're talking third-party data where we go and send it to a VIP, for example, well, the minute the data leaves our hands, it's out of our control, and it becomes manipulated and changed. And so now you've got scenarios where whether it's depletion data, revenue data, pricing data, activity-based data, the minute it goes away from us, we don't control that. Now we're not singing from the same hymnal. Somebody's looking at it a little different or makes a different calculation. Now we're at an impasse. You say we only grew 18%. We say we grew 21%. What's the right answer? So not only does data become currency, but it becomes an obstacle in some cases to getting to the end result that we both want to grow. We're arguing over data.
Right, and you want to have more advanced conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so KPIs. You have supplier meetings. They come in, talk to you about what they want to get done. What do they bring with nowadays?
It varies. The really good ones are coming with a full-baked plan. And in some cases, they're pretty demanding, which is good. We want to be challenged. But they're coming full-baked. Everything from what our sales growth, pod growth, activity-based, on-premise, off-premise, all the way through with a budget, with a lot of stuff that you guys have lined out today. They come ready, buttoned up. Others come with a number, and we've got to figure out how to get there.
Now, if they come buttoned up, they bring you a phone book, they give you an Excel, all over the map.
Yeah, all over the map.
So it'd be nice if you got that in a clean format.
Consistency would be king.
And then you could agree with them what you're going to execute against, what goals you're going to set, maybe communicate that with them.
Yep.
And then share with them execution versus that sort of agreed plan or agreed strategy or whatever terminology you want to put around it.
Sure. I think if it's done right, it's a dialogue. It should never be forced. And so if even the most buttoned up suppliers are coming, there should be rationale on why we're going to do what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. It's nice to say, well, we're going to grow 3,000 cases this year. Okay, how? Well, What do you mean how? You're just going to throw 3,000 more cases. But to come with the plan of here's what the pricing's going to look like, here's what the activity, here's where we feel we have gaps in our distribution in terms of fine dining, here's where our brand strategy is, and this is where we feel our customers is shopping or purchasing or experiencing our brands. We want to be here. That makes everything a whole lot easier. Not only is that 3,000 less daunting, but it's definitely a better dialogue in where we can say, okay, organically, we're already growing at 2,400 cases. We think we're going to grow. So now the gap is just 600 cases. Let's really go and be brand ambassadors.
Maybe they're bringing you their national account execution that they didn't used to have, or if only. So there are a couple perspectives to look at this, right? There's the supplier perspective and the wholesaler perspective, and we got a slide on each. In your eyes, what are the benefits, the key benefits to suppliers, and the reasons why something like this is interesting?
Well, I think in today's day and age, you need a scorecard. You need a benchmark in what we're going after. And even when you look at that distributor 1, distributor 2, distributor 3, certainly you could look at that across the country, but we would look at that within our own 22 states. Texas is a different animal than say Florida, and different animal than say Kentucky, especially if you're just talking about one segment such as whiskey. Those three are treated tremendously different, plus within how our portfolios interact. So coming in and being able to say, okay, here's what we're going to scorecard against across the country, you get better traction in terms of driving that from the top down. So strategically, that's a huge benefit to be able to come in one way working.
Well, and the closer you can get to automating those scorecards, the better, right? I mean, absolutely. Tim shared earlier that we get feedback from suppliers about different wholesalers and their ability to execute versus these agreed, let's not call them commitments, but agreements. And I don't know, he didn't really make it sound this way, but really none of the distributors we work with get very poor scores there because at least they have a tool, right? They're doing something. They're ahead a lot of the game because there are a lot of wholesalers across North America that are not yet implementing a tool like ours. So y'all look really good versus them, right? But it can be better, right? Because this whole database of what are you doing, what are you executing against could be better compiled and better communicated. That's kind of the point.
Sure.
Anything else we should cover supplier perspective?
No, I think you got it.
Wrong button. There you go. All right, same question.
Well, this is definitely in our wheelhouse and what we struggle with every day. Suppliers coming in, I guess the best way to put it, with a common language or a common way of working or consistency in how they're looking at the business. I mean, that's nirvana, right? That's the ultimate to be able to get to. It's not always going to be get to. You look at just a simple metric like pods. A supplier may look at that as saying anytime that brand is in the account, that's one pod. We may look at it as every time we sell a different size into that account, it's a different point of distribution. So is either of them wrong? No. But to be able to have consistency across how we do language and how we do activity and what we're actually being measured upon helps us do a lot of different things, whether it be where we shift our resources. So we talk about 25 years ago. 25 years ago, a rep could do a lot into account. Today, their time is diminished considerably. And so do we shift more activity-based resources into merchandising, which merchandisers then can do more of the activity base. We let the sales guys sell and the merchandisers merchandise. So if we have consistency across what our suppliers are looking to, not only do we get better analytics, better scoring, better execution, but we can shift our resources as needed as well.
Agree. Yeah, thank you. Just to get a little more specific, maybe we start with the circle here and walk through, or I'll walk through and you supplement me. How's that?
Okay.
What are we talking about really, right? Like we've been talking conceptually, but in reality, what are we physically talking about? So it is replacing that spreadsheet that a supplier might come with of the 100 things that they'd like focused on. with some sort of, with custom objects that we build in Salesforce as part of the GreatVines package that actually flow to distributor CRM tool where they have workflow, they look at, you're using the tool in the meeting rather than the spreadsheet in the meeting, and you're like, the person managing that market is, well, of these 100, I can do 60, I can do 30, whatever the number is, and we can kind of, we agree new pods, but there's no way we could sign up for that. We'll sign up for a lesser amount, whatever. But it's actually then modified and flows back, and now you've got kind of a record. And then the distributor will then create, when they go, because they're already creating survey plans or objectives in our tool to action against. They can link those things back to the supplier targets, right? The supplier themes. And it makes it all reportable. They go out, capture results, right? They go into a store, they take a survey, get a picture of a 3-case display. That is also a new point of distribution for some product that was on target and was on target to have 3-case displays and whatever. There's all kinds of value there, and it's reported back automatically to the supplier's system. So the supplier can actually look at their own execution in market that they generated plus distributor execution, so the account calls they made, along with the account calls you make on that same account. We're also talking about physically sharing call records. So I'm a supplier, I go in the account, we do an event, I pay a $1,500 bar bill, I make a note of it. My R&DC rep comes in the next day, he's able to look, hey, supplier A was in here, they paid a pretty big bar bill, I'm gonna try and leverage that. I've been talking to this guy about whatever in the first place, so it's just more ammunition, right? There's no reason you wouldn't wanna know what suppliers are doing in those accounts and vice versa related to your brands.
No, absolutely. I mean, what you basically nailed down here is something that we've been striving for now almost 6 years with GreatVines, and it's a catalyst for what I would call transparency, first of all, because I think there's transparency through all of this, but better conversations, whether it's better conversations up front that we talked about in terms of sitting down with a plan and having a full agreed to plan all the way through to which accounts we're going to go through, really have a better conversation about the business. But now you've also put in a layer of accountability on both ends. So I think one of the examples used most through the days was Griffin Bay's. So if you went through this process, you had a great conversation with that supplier, and then we went through and we executed, we were able to talk and share information, and then you come back and go, but you guys really stunk it up on Griffin Bay. Yeah, but it wasn't in the conversation. You never mentioned that during over here. You're now holding us accountable for something you didn't put us responsible for. That's a great way of conversation. You talk about the benefit for us. The other end of it is, I think there's often that supplier going into an account, it's Big Brother watching, it's Big Brother looking. And you know what? Yes, it could be 2 out of 10, it could be 8 out of 10. A supplier walks into an account and there's something we could do better. That's great. That should be brought to the forefront so we can do better. But on the flip side, 2 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, that supplier rep is going in and making a sale or making a push or dropped off a sample and need us to follow up. That's only working in partnership and helping us do that job better. So all the way around, that's a better conversation, and that's what's outlined here, and that's what we're striving for.
Okay, so, and maybe this is a good time to point out, I didn't talk to it on the previous slides, R&DC's got GreatVines. GreatVines, you only have 4 distributors, and one of them's in Australia. How's that helping me as a national supplier, right? Well, I mean, we intend for this to consume data from other CRM tools, right? Like, we would love one of y'all big suppliers that works with that Southern Wine and Spirits company to make them send us this sort of data, right? And then we would bring it into GreatVines also. So that is part of the vision. Obviously, we have no ability to execute on that if we can't get suppliers to put, pressure on people that we don't work with to share that kind of information. And likewise, Jay knows, we were in discussion with one of their large suppliers that doesn't at least yet use GreatVines, and we were very willing, and they were very willing to share the data out of GreatVines into, supplier other tool. So we're not just talking about GreatVines to GreatVines, which of course we are talking about, and selfishly we'd like that to be always the way it works, is GreatVines to GreatVines, but we realize this sometimes could be RNDC to supplier data warehouse, and that's fine. I mean, the whole point is to allow you to execute better with the partners.
Sure, and I don't think that's not necessarily a hard sell from our standpoint of we want. The way we want to do it is with GreatVines. Certainly, we've partnered with GreatVines, and it's a fantastic partnership. The difference is supplier A, going back to that one slide, supplier A comes in and says, well, we've got a survey tool we want your reps to use. Supplier B comes in and says, well, we have a in-market tool, which is essentially a fancy word of saying survey tool, that we want you to use. And we have an execution platform we want you to use. The next thing you know, our reps are spending so much time bouncing back and forth between apps that at the end of the day, all the supplier really wants is that data that's captured. So if we can get back to a language that everybody's using and one way of working, we can get that data almost seamlessly right out. GreatVines, with the partnerships that you have, has been a good way of us kind of holding external forces outside and actually bringing some suppliers in to say, I know you have your app, but if you use ours, we can get you that information better, quicker, faster, timelier, and it's worked. And it's worked well for us.
So, I mean, what's up on the slide is kind of what's included in the service, right? We'll manage the data, we'll watch for things to go bump in the night, answer questions, provide support. At the end of the day, obviously, it's not our data. And we never claim data, ownership of any client data, for that matter. So, this is a service that we'd be, we're facilitating, but it's.
But for us, this goes back to singing from the same hymnal or running plays from the same playbook. The idea that data's going out and being manipulated, or data's going out being fished back in from another source. Certainly that could just be the way we have to do it. That's a way of working. But if there's a way that a partner like GreatVines can be the conduit, and so that they're seeing the same information, the supplier's seeing the same information that we're seeing the same information that the supplier is, I think that's a perfect marriage that allows us to be more productive and doesn't go back to the argument over, no, it's 21%, no, it's 18%, no, that's 250 pods, no, it's only 200 pods. I mean, it gets to that consistency. If we're spending more time actually finding the opportunities and going out and acting on it, and less time arguing over the data or who's got which data and which is right, trust me, we all make more money, which is what we're in it for in the long run anyway.
Did it just get noticeably darker in here?
Yeah. As soon as I said money, which is kind of scary.
Imagine that. And Jay and I are the only thing between you and alcohol. And it got darker. Okay. Anything else, Jay?
No, I think so.
Questions? Yeah. We're waiting for a certain supplier momentum commitment to actually finish building it. We have it all spec'd, including the API version. And given that we're already extracting all this data from RNDC system every night and sending it to their data warehouse, we have all the from built. The to is not hard to build. It's more about getting some customer commitment. Go ahead, Scott.
How are you mapping RNDC's data to the suppliers?
And I should repeat these questions. So the first one was about the availability, which I said would be available pretty quickly after we finish building it, which will happen not until we get a customer commitment. Remember the whole 80% this morning, the stuff that we build because y'all asked for. So we felt like we've done a lot of leading the band here. Now we're waiting for the, people to sing along. Sorry, what was the next question?
How do you map?
Item mapping, sorry. Well, it turns out we don't have to be BDN of 25 years ago. TD Links is the account mapping key. So it would require that you have TD links or that you get the distributor item number in your VIP feed on the accounts, because we'll map by those keys. We're not going to maintain a database of mapping keys. It also turns out they maintain supplier item number in their database because it's how you guys do purchase orders with them. So, and they are sending it already, and it's already in GreatVines and the whole bit. So all we need to do is so we're going to send it to you with supplier item number, your supplier item number, and if it's incorrect, we need to get it fixed in their source system, ERP, and then it'll work correctly.
So this is only an RNDC?
And any other supplier that wants to, distributor that wants to use this, we're going to need that populated, yeah. If it evolves to a point where there needs to be another model, then we'll have to figure that out. But the original vision is not for us to, look, BDN grew to be a service where a large size supplier would pay them $1 million a year for depletion data. We do not perceive there to be that kind of market for the spend for this. Like, I'm not going to come to you, Scott, and say you're going to pay $100,000 a year for this, and you're going to go, okay, yeah, give it to me. So absent the fact that people aren't going to pay, they're already in a distributor relationship, maybe even a contract that says they get this data. So there isn't the money probably to do all that mapping. So we're going to need to rely on it being in place. And anywhere EDI is being used, it is in place.
I go back to answer both questions real quick. So first of all, from a timing, for us, can't come soon enough. We have over 7,500 sales reps using this tool. And the idea of it stays relevant, the more emphasis we put on it. So the minute we know suppliers are going into that account and communicating directly with those sales reps, certainly heightened awareness will be, and we continue to get a very high usage rate, right? The second part with the data is another reason, again, it can't come soon enough. The minute, like I said, the minute our data goes to VIP, and I'll pick on VIP for a minute, it's being mapped, but maybe not to the way we've got it. So whether it's a VAP pack or a specialty pack or a private label that's getting rolled up differently, we're seeing differences between the VIP data and what our depletion data is. And we know what we sold. We don't make up those numbers. We know what we sold. So it's hard to defend against where somebody else has mapped it. The idea here is we would map cleanly, and that would help everybody.
I don't know who was, Mark, were you the next question?
Sure. Okay, hi. I'm Mark Freeberg, and I work for one of those 4 distributors that you mentioned, but not the one from Australia. Okay. So I really appreciate your comments, John, about this solution, and I think it's a great idea and sorely needed. But my question is, and I've been interested in hearing more about it after you get through this first phase with RNDC. But what is the strategy for some of the issues we just heard around mapping and standard for sharing, item and SKU attribute data? Is this? And you mentioned VIP, which is another standard. So we're as a distributor and a supplier, we have too many standards and they're not common. So is there something you're seeing that you can do or we can do together to create a common open source standard for sharing of data?
Well, there is an open standard promoted for the industry called OpenDSD. I'd be happy to talk to you about, Mark. We don't completely align with that. It was originally built by a distributor ERP company out of Colorado that I'm drawing a blank on their name. Yeah, Encompass. Look, we are maintaining that stuff as attributes on the items now that come in the feed from the distributor ERP. So we were going to rely on a lot of that being in place for this to work, because we're not really reinventing the wheel there.
Do you foresee any issue or obstacle or hiccup if RNDC, for example, if you were to merge with some other large distributors, is that going to be pre-baked in with, if all of a sudden your footprint expands to include a whole bunch of external distributor network? Is that something that's already been discussed with potential
What
partners?
do you know that I don't? Let's start there.
I just mean it's something that if
Have you signed the non-disclosure agreement?
I know nothing.
No, it's a great question. I think we evaluate each tool that we use and any potential partner we use in terms of best practices and what's going to be best moving forward in terms of not only our company objectives, transparency, standardization, centralization, those type of things, but what's best for our supplier partners and what's the best available tool for them. So if a merger or an acquisition or something like that were to come about, I think the first point of business would be to chart each tool and then identify what is the best for our supplier partners and move forward that way.
Us as a small supplier, where it would, if all of a sudden it just flipped a switch and now we're with every single one of the distributors, that would be a compelling reason for us to use the tool.
And I think you'd agree, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school. I think there would be some strategy on our part to understand those opportunities, that if we had a partnership with a tool like this, what are the benefits to bringing in more? You know, we have a competitor too, just like you guys have a competitor. We have a competitor out there that's got East Coast to West Coast distribution, and what's our point of difference to them? And if this is a point of differentiation, then it might be something we take an opportunity to go at, provided that suppliers are on board.
Right. Oh, thanks.
Was there any lawyers in the room, and did I just incriminate myself?
I just heard you guarantee you're going to keep using GreatVines forever. That's what I heard. Yeah, look, the whole BevPath concept only works if the two parties are interested and willing to share data, you know, full stop. So, and you didn't hear me say, I said we had a certain number of distributors. I didn't say they're all on board to share this information. That's up to them, right? Completely.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the BevPath early discussions with John and Tim and the team, they came back with this solution to a problem that we presented with them in terms of how do we get, John mentioned contractual obligation to get data out, or fending off a supplier who wants to bring in a different tool. How do we get them on GreatVines, and they don't want to make that investment because they just made the investment in the tool. So how do we get them that data so that we don't have to take on another application to detract from our sales force? So we went to these guys and said, we've got a problem. We've got to share this data. And although we use our our depletion data tool, which is MicroStrategy, they can go in and mine data. We've got to be able to get them the exact information they want in a timely fashion, and we can't do that for 2,500 different suppliers all the same time, all different 2,500 different ways. So this was really a huge step, I think, in where the industry is going and helping us solve that problem. But we appreciate it.
Question.
Yeah, Jay, back to specialty pack and standardization. Obviously, you know what you sold, but it may not be in the same form that the supplier sold it to you. So I was a little bit confused on the answer. I mean, what is your thought around standardization? Does it go back to the original form that you received the product in, or is there some other derivation?
I think it varies supplier to supplier, and I think Tracy would be a great person to ask that as well as we break out. I think you have to look at, let's just say we put, novel, revolutionize the industry and put a Coca-Cola product next to a whiskey product in a co-pack, very, very, very creative. I think you have to look at that from the sales side. We have to identify that as a separate item number, as that's a new product. And how we then record that as a depletion, I would think you would want to see it, as a subset of that original brand. So how that rolls up. That would be the standardization and consistency. We've come across where a supplier has had the same, supplier does a pre-mix as well as a standard product, let's say a tequila and a mix, and they've co-packed it but wanted it as two separate item numbers and break down that formula. We've been able to do that because that's what they've asked for. Or they've wanted, I want to know how much we sold during the Cinco de Mayo time of that margarita mix. So we want it as one group so we know to plan next year for a VAP like that. We've been able to produce that way as well. So it really does, that's the partnership, and that's where, as my group in shared services and Tracy's group in IT work together, is solving those little problems supplier by supplier.
Well, and Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think many of these executional things you're measuring are not even at the item level anyway. They're up. Well,
it depends. That's a good point. There is a lot of, goes back to the good conversation. So supplier comes in and sits down and has that conversation. And if the supplier is only asking for how many points of distribution and how much volume are you going to do, that's pretty much what we're tracking. If we get down to, well, where's the shelf placement or where's the display, that's another level. If there is a specialty pack, if there's a specialty program, if there is a sponsorship or a festival or something coming through the market that we want to write KPIs against, we've got that capability. We can do surveys all the way down to the SKU level. So I think that's what, going back to that survey topic, the more creative you can get with the survey, standardize it, but the more creative and more direct that you can get, you can identify that area of your business. So a gift pack at the holidays or a gift pack for promotion. We just had an NBA sponsorship come in, and the supplier wanted to track everything they did against the NBA sponsorship, including down to the dollars, bar spend. We were able to create surveys that allowed us to get that anecdotal information that you can get from sales report. So you can get pretty granular with your tool.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I know this sounds a bit dreamy and a bit far-fetched, and I'm not quite old enough in the industry to remember the pre-BDN days, although when I entered the industry, we had a couple wholesalers that still weren't sending us depletions in pretty big markets like Michigan. And so I do remember the sort of end of that era. And I just got to think that back when Steve Bliss started BDN and, was trying to make this very pitch to some people, they all said, yeah, that sounds really dreamy. It'll never happen. You'll never get all these distributors to send their data to one person, So sometimes you got to believe, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we started a new process back in April of 2017, and I'm sure the other distributors in the room can attest to something like this. But it was a new item request and how we set up new item request. And it was a year of change management, not only from how we used to do it, because we used to be able to quick code it in and then be able to place an order, and the operations guys were done. But the data wasn't always accurate or there, and we're now going back to cleanse mistakes that were made years ago. On the supplier end, the suppliers were getting frustrated with us because, well, wait a minute, you're asking me for stuff you never asked before, like cola. That's kind of important, and we can be fined if we don't have that yet. Before, we would be placing orders and not have identification that it's legal to sell in the state. So by slowing down a little bit, we got a little bit more accurate. I mean, that wasn't there, but 3 years ago. So I think as not only government has come in and said we have to regulate things like this more, but then the reporting end, what you guys want to see and what the suppliers want back in terms of feedback, we've got to get more detailed in our data.
Any other questions for Jay? Jay, thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Appreciate it.